6 p.m. available, is not. There's no 6 p.m. available, Adrian, sorry. I'll let Keith know. Smashed it.
Thank you. If you could, yes, please let him know.
Will do.
Thanks.
Ah. Trooper.
Worse than usual.
Yes.
Minute.com.
Thomas, happy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
First Minister, you are now muted, and Becky Johnson's coming.
Thank you. Hey, Becky. Oh, you're on mute, I'm afraid.
Hello, sorry about that.
That's okay. Thanks for joining us. Are you hearing me okay?
I am, thank you.
Excellent. Good. Well, everyone's here now, so I'll quickly run through it so I can get out of your hair. First Minister will be with us very shortly, make a short statement followed by questions from the media. You each get 2 questions each. He'll invite you to ask them by name, so don't worry about remembering what order you're in. But for those who are interested, the order goes: Sarah Dickens at BBC Wales is up first, followed by Adrian at ITV Wales, then Becky at Sky, then Andy at Channel 4, Adam at PA, Will at Wales Online, Howell Griffith at BBC, Lydia at the Daily Post, Thomas at LBC, Rob Taylor Wrexham.com, Nathan Shoesmith at The Speaker, Andrew Nuttall at The Leader, and Tom at Carers World. There's no slides or anything this afternoon, so it'll just be sort of 5 minutes of pre-prepared speech. Will Davis is on the laptop if anyone's got any urgent issues. Please keep yourself on mute when you're not asking your questions. If anyone's got any questions, put your hand up now. Becky, go.
Can I forego my questions, please? I'm probably going to be doing a live straight afterwards, so I think I'll have dialed out by then.
So you're just here to watch?
Yes, please.
No worries. We'll take you off the list.
Thank you.
Cheers, Becky. Anyone else got any questions? Happy days. Right. Have fun, everyone. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
So just she's 3, but if you need to go back to 5, that's still 5 on the order sheet.
Yeah, yeah.
And put your speaker view off, yeah?
Yeah, yeah. I'm doing that now.
And the FM still muted.
Yeah.
Get rid of all that.
No, do you want to get...
Minimise it. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Wait there 2 seconds, minimize that.
And then mute me. Hi, Sarah. Can we just get some audio from you so you appear on the screen, please?
You're on mute.
I'm not.
No,
Oh, Sarah, you're on mute, sorry.
He wouldn't unmute.
There we go.
So at this level,
Yeah, great. Looks great.
and we're all very happy.
Thank you, Sarah.
Cheers, Will. Thanks.
Go. Yeah.
Live for a couple of minutes now, so the mics will be hot. You okay to record for me?
I can. We're just about to go on air, so you're right at the time, and you.
Yeah.
12, was it? 12,
12, 17 looks like.
12, 17. I'll do like a toy spring. Cold spring. Cold spring.
I think we want the record button down now, then re-record, not that big show.
Right,
Okay, Mike's alive.
same here.
Okay, on there. Supermarkets have a bumper time, haven't they?
Wel, prynawn da, unwaith eto. Good afternoon. On Friday of last week, I explained that coronavirus was once again accelerating across Wales, eroding the gains that we have achieved together during the fire break period. Throughout the pandemic, all the actions that we have taken here in Wales have been designed to protect our NHS and to save lives, and that remains unchanged today. The facts are stark. Unless we respond now to the growing number of people infected with the virus, the advice we have from our scientific and medical experts is that by the 12th of January, the total number of people with coronavirus in hospital in Wales could rise to 2,200. And our modelling suggests that unless we act, between 1,000 and 1,700 preventable deaths could take place over the winter period. On Friday, the All Wales 7-day incidence rate was 187 cases per 100,000 people. Today, that has risen to almost 210 cases per 100,000. We've seen further rises amongst the under 25 aged group in 17 of the 22 local authority areas in Wales. And more worryingly still, cases of coronavirus are beginning to rise in the over 60 age group in most parts of Wales. This is a virus that thrives on human contacts, in our homes or when we come together. That is why, over the weekend, the Cabinet met to consider the detail of a set of new targeted restrictions in the hospitality and leisure sectors and a new financial package to support effective businesses. The measures we are taking are based on what the UK SAGE Group tells us has worked best elsewhere. So that is why from 6 p.m. on Friday, new national measures will be introduced to provide restrictions for hospitality and indoor entertainment attractions. Pubs, bars, restaurants and cafes will have to close by 6 p.m. and will not be allowed to serve alcohol. After 6 o'clock, they will be able to provide takeaway services only. From that same date, indoor entertainment venues, including cinemas, bingo halls, bowling alleys, soft play centres, casinos, skating rinks and amusement arcades will have to close. Indoor attractions such as museums, galleries and heritage sites will also have to close, but outdoor visitor attractions will be able to remain open. The rest of the national measures we have in Wales will remain the same as they are today. There will be no changes to extended households, how many people can meet in public outdoors or indoor places, or restrictions on other businesses. Now, when the English lockdown ends on Wednesday of this week, we will look again at travel restrictions in and out of Wales, and we'll make a further announcement later this week. And we will formally review these restrictions by the 17th of December and then every 3 weeks. Now, I recognise just how hard the hospitality and visitor sectors have worked to comply with the regulations, to make their businesses compliant and to protect customers from the threat of coronavirus. I am very grateful for everything the sector has done, and I know that these new restrictions will be difficult, coming as they do at one of the busiest times of the year. But it is a simple fact that we continue to face a virus that is moving incredibly quickly across Wales, and a virus that will exploit every opportunity when we spend time with one another. To support the businesses affected by these new restrictions, we will provide the most generous package of financial assistance anywhere in the United Kingdom. This will include £180 million of new help, specifically for tourism, leisure and hospitality businesses. And that's in addition to the various support schemes available from the UK government. There will also be a package element of £160 million for those 60,000 businesses on the non-domestic rating list here in Wales. Businesses including those in retail, tourism, hospitality and leisure and their supply chains, which are materially affected by the restrictions, will receive payments of between £3,000 and £5,000. And discretionary grants of up to £2,000 will continue to be available for those even smaller businesses that are not on the non-domestic rating list. This fund will be delivered by local authorities, and I remain very grateful for their ongoing support and help to deliver this part of the package. The £180 million fund targeted at hospitality, tourism and leisure businesses specifically will provide grants of up to £100,000 for small and medium-sized enterprises and £150,000 for larger businesses. These grants will be linked to the number of people employed in those businesses and their operating costs. Up to 10,000 businesses will be supported by this new fund. And it's the first time that we've had such a sector-specific fund here in Wales, and it will be delivered through Business Wales. We will work with our partners to ensure that where we can, we will make payments to businesses affected as quickly as possible and before Christmas. And further information on the detail of all of this will be provided on the Business Wales website shortly. Now, the weeks ahead will be difficult and demanding for all of us. But as we look further ahead, there are some signs of how life will get better. Last week, the NHS in Wales carried out a large and successful test of all the practical things that will need to be in place once a vaccine is given the go-ahead. Now, that go-ahead could be as early as this week, and once it comes, we will be ready for it. Last week, we saw the first mass testing programme happen in Merthyr Tydfil. More than 10,000 people have been tested in the first 8 days. The strong sense of community responsibility has been very evident in that terrific response. I thank everyone who has come forward and encourage others to do so over the next 7 days, including those people who will need to come back for retesting. This week, we will begin using the rapid result lateral flow tests in some care homes to help reunite families who have been separated for many months. And today, we published new advice about visits in hospitals, offering hope that in the right circumstances, both parents can be more involved in their baby's antenatal care. So even as we face real challenges in the here and now, there are possibilities that if we continue to pull together and make the difference we need to see today, then as far as coronavirus is concerned, 2021 could be a better year for us all. I ask again today for your help in making that a reality in our lives. Together, we will keep Wales safe. Diolch yn fawr I chi gyd. I'll now take questions as usual as well. The whole of the proceedings will be broadcast live on the Welsh Government social media channels. And first today is over to Sarah Dickens at BBC Wales.
First Minister, thank you. When you looked at the Scottish example, what happened there, why did you decide to adopt the closing of pubs at 6 o'clock and no alcohol, rather than changing the numbers of people from a household who can go? They're much stricter, aren't they, on people meeting up from households. They're 2 households to meet, us 4. Why did you decide to ditch the alcohol but keep us meeting in the groups that we were?
Well, alcohol isn't allowed in Scotland either, so that is the same. And our decision on allowing 4 people from different households to meet is essentially driven by our wish to make sure that our young people have a legal way of getting together. When you allow simply households to meet, it really doesn't work for younger people. They can't meet their friends, they can't meet up with the people that they socialise with normally. And I was very keen, and our cabinet was very keen, not to devise a system where the only way that young people could meet up together was by going outside the rules. By allowing 4 people from 4 different households together, our young people have a legitimate, a legal way in which they can be in a cafe together, spend time in each other's company in that regulated setting. And that's why we've come to that different conclusion.
And I think those businesses, you recognise how much businesses in the hospitality sector have suffered already. I think a lot of them would like to hear from you the evidence that it's their sector where the virus is spreading.
Well, that evidence is there for them to see. It's been in a series of the TAC reports from the Technical Advisory Group that we publish their advice to us every week. And on a number of occasions, they have published evidence that shows that when people meet together in a hospitality setting, you're not just having a glancing encounter with somebody as you do if you're going around a supermarket. You're sitting together with people for a significant period of time. And the evidence, I'm afraid, is just there. When we get together in that way, whether it's in our own homes or in a hospitality setting, the virus thrives and the cases rise, and we end up with the position that we see in Wales today. And it's a matter of deep regret because of all the work that the sector has done and the people who work in it, that we are having, as in England and as in Scotland, to add this measure to the repertoire of actions we are taking to make sure that when we go into that Christmas period, those 5 days when restrictions will be relaxed for households, we've created a position in which the risk to one another and to our health service can be contained. Sarah, thank you very much. Over to Adrian Masters at ITV Wales.
First Minister, thank you. And just let you know, I'm joining this press conference from a cafe in Ask, and they very kindly allowed me to use the Wi-Fi here. But if the coffee machine interrupts us, then just to explain what's going on there. But there is a serious point, because the owner here, Andrea, has been talking to me about their concerns, and something that she'd like to know is some clarity on what she's able to do. One of the popular things that they do in this cafe is mulled wine and mince pies. Does that mean that that would not be allowed under these new restrictions? And also, Andrea would like to know, does she have to apply for the grant, or will they be issued automatically?
Thanks very much, Adrian. Well, the mince pies are no problem. The mulled wine, it will depend whether it's got alcohol in it or not. Not all mulled wine does, and if you can have a non-alcoholic wine to have with your mince pies, then that would be fine. In terms of the help, we'll be using the systems that we've used up until now. So the help you get on the basis of your rateable value will be as automatic as we can make it. And, you know, obviously people have to say that they want the money. We don't give it to people who don't want it. But so long as we know that you want it, then the system is as automatic as we can manage.
Thank you. And could you also explain how you as a government have squared stopping alcohol sales in controlled environments like this, but allowing them to go ahead so people can buy them from supermarkets and then drink them in unregulated environments, i.e. at home?
Yeah, well, I agree. It's a difficult conundrum. We're not going to change our approach to limiting the sale of alcohol in off-licences and in supermarkets after 10 o'clock at night. But I think the judgment is that if you made a 6 p.m. cut-off, it wouldn't make any difference to the sale. People would simply buy what they needed earlier in the day. So it would have been an action without a consequence. And as a result, we decided not to take it. The good news, Adrian, is that they appear to be raffling you in the cafe. Just behind, viewers will have seen that if they buy a ticket for £1, you appear to be available. So there it is. Well advertised. Thank you very yeah, very good cause indeed. Thank you very much indeed. Over to Andy Davis at Channel 4.
Thank you, First Minister. A really significant amount of public money is being spent here to help mitigate the impact that this will have on business. What does the evidence upon which you base this decision suggest will happen to the spread of the virus as a result of these new measures?
Well, the evidence, Andy, is that the public money that we are spending will help us to mitigate the rise in coronavirus cases that we are currently seeing across Wales. By itself, it is always hard to isolate a specific impact for a specific course of action. It is the cumulative effect of the package of measures that we are putting in place, just as Tier 3 measures in England are a package of measures and Level 3 measures in Scotland come as a package. What SAGE tells us is that Level 3 restrictions were successful in suppressing the virus. Level 2 restrictions were not. The only thing that was significantly missing from our repertoire, when you compared it with Tier 3 or Level 3 restrictions elsewhere, was that we had a considerably more liberal approach to hospitality. That's why we are filling that gap by the measures we have announced today, and the impact, we hope and are confident, will be found in further suppression of coronavirus as it is circulating in Wales today.
Just in terms of other areas you might be able to target, we were told this month that school children aged 12 to 16 were 8 times more likely to be an index case in a household cluster, even though it wasn't particularly clear where they were picking up coronavirus, whether it was in the school or another setting. Given that children are more likely to be asymptomatic. Isn't there a really strong case now for you to be rolling out lateral flow rapid tests in schools as a way to try to catch some of those cases before they spread?
Yes, I agree with that. I think there is a strong case for trying to commit lateral flow devices in schools for that purpose. So we are, at the moment, using the lateral flow devices in our mass testing in Merthyr, in the care home pilot that I mentioned that begins this week, and with some frontline staff in health and social care. As the volumes of those tests grow, then we will look to use them in other settings as well. We'll never have enough to do everything we would like to do, but schools is very much on the list of sectors that we are hoping to prioritise for the reasons that you've just heard, because it would mean that asymptomatic children would then be identified, they would be able to be looked after, and they wouldn't have the effect of spreading the virus to other young people. So it is very much on our list of target sectors for the use of those lateral flow devices as more of them become available to us. Over to Adam Hale at PA.
You chose Wales's 5-week lockdown to last for 17 days, the shortest length of time that was suggested by your advisors, but there were options for longer periods. Countrymen obviously further restrictions. Do you think it was a mistake to make the fire break as short as it was, or perhaps not to have a gradual easing of lockdown measures as advocated by some of your opposition, when businesses could now pay the price for it?
Well, I don't think that we took the wrong decision in relation to the lockdown itself. The advice to us was that by going early, and we had our period of fire break earlier than any other part of the United Kingdom, that the earlier we went, the more effective it would be, and that provided it was early and it was deep, that 17 days was adequate, and the fire break has delivered everything that we had hoped of it. The difficulties we face today are not, I believe, rooted in the fire break decision itself. Could we have come out of the fire break with even more restrictions than we put in place? Well, I think that is a more open question. I was very interested to read the article in the Times at the weekend by Michael Gove, the Cabinet Minister in the UK government, explaining why the restrictions in Tier 3 areas post the UK fire break will be of the level that they are. We made the judgment at the time. We made it on the best evidence that we had at the time. Numbers have gone up faster than we had anticipated or hoped, and that's why we're having to take the actions we are today.
Thank you. And what's your reaction to the fact that Wales's COVID death rate is currently the highest in the UK? Is Wales' older and sicker population enough of an explanation for that?
Well, I think the first thing to say is not to draw too much at all from a very brief period that those figures cover. This is not a competition between nations inside the United Kingdom or between the United Kingdom and other countries. If you look back over the long haul of coronavirus, then excess deaths in Wales are significantly below where they have been in England. And given that our population is older, sicker and poorer, then that is, that flies in the face of what you would have expected. Over the very recent past, that has not been the case. But I just think, as the ONS and others who publish the figures say, beware of drawing general conclusions from a very short period of those figures. Adam, diolch yn fawr. Over to Will Hayward at Wales Online.
Thank you, First Minister. Can you explain to us exactly what success looks like with these new measures? Should it reduce the amount of new cases? Does it stabilise the amount of new cases? Or are we just slowing the speed at which the virus is increasing?
Well, for me, what success looks like is that our NHS is able to go on providing care for people who fall ill with coronavirus and is able to go on doing all the other things that we look to the NHS to do. If we were not to take action and we were to have 2,200 people with confirmed coronavirus in hospital beds, it would inevitably mean that other activity would be squeezed out of the system. There just wouldn't be the capacity there to do that and to do everything else that the NHS is trying to do today. So that is my touchstone for success, that if we take these actions and it means that our NHS has the capacity it needs because the numbers of people with coronavirus are contained, then that will have justified the actions that we are taking.
Thank you. So just to be clear, you'd want the R rate to come down to 1 or below to consider these a success, else the virus is still growing exponentially. Is that fair to say? And if I just can ask you, can you explain some of your thinking behind these rules? If places are closing at 6 p.m. anyway, why can people not have a glass of wine with lunch, for instance? Was midday drinking driving infection, for instance? And gyms and leisure centres obviously are packed in the evening. Can you just explain what your thoughts were behind keeping them open?
Well, it's the package deal, Will, as I said earlier. All of these aspects are looked at individually and then are looked at in the round. We looked very carefully yesterday at the whole issue of whether alcohol could be allowed. But the advice we had was that that would be to erode the public health advantage that we see from the measures that are being taken in Scotland. And we want to capture that public health benefit here in Wales. And you can always, this is the experience that I have found, is that you can always find a reason to chip away at the restrictions that we are putting in place. And you can often make a case for something in isolation. Why don't you allow that? Why don't you allow something else? But the effect of that cumulatively is that you undermine the effectiveness of the measures that you are taking. So that is why we decided to stick with the Scottish example, which SAGE says has been successful, and not to allow alcohol in those settings. On gyms and leisure centres, the thing that persuaded us there is that the mental health benefit to people of being able to take exercise is significant. Again, a different case could be made. So you're always weighing it up and trying to think of the different harms that come with coronavirus. We know coronavirus has had a huge impact on people's sense of well-being and of mental health, and that the ability to go out and to take exercise is, for some people, the thing that mitigates that the most. And weighing that in with the public health evidence from elsewhere led us to the conclusion that we should keep those things open even while we are having to introduce new restrictions in the hospitality area.
Sorry, would you want the R rate to come down to 0 or below for this to be considered a success?
I would like coronavirus to be suppressed in Wales to a point where our health service is able to go on coping. That's the test that I set out in answer to your original question, and that is the key test for me. Thanks, Will. Over to Howard Griffith at BBC News.
Fernanda, on the Scottish model, level 3 in Scotland doesn't allow household meetings indoors. Why are you convinced that pubs are the problem in alcohol sales and not household mixing? What's the data to show that there are more cases coming out of licensed venues than there are from household mixing?
Well, we allow 2 households to meet together. They can only meet together in their own home. And while that does bring risks with it, it helps to mitigate some of the other harms that coronavirus causes, including the harms of loneliness, of isolation, of the difficulties that families face when they're not able to meet anybody else from their own family indoors. So it does bring risks with it, but in the package deal that I've just described, our view and the advice we had is that we could continue to allow that very modest concession of 2 households being able to form a single extended household, and reinforce that with the new measures we are taking in relation to hospitality.
You've said in the past you pride yourself on being a government which plans first and announces later. You announced on Friday there would be measures for the licensed trade, then spent the weekend planning it. Have you failed then by your own standard this time?
Don't believe so. We announced it on Friday because the message from the sector, we were obviously already in discussions with them, is that the longer we could give them the in-principle decision, the more time they would have to take the actions they need to take. So I thought it was important, having made the decision in principle by the Cabinet, to let the sector know that. I think the weekend has been very helpfully spent. We've had some very detailed discussions with our colleagues in local government about the delivery of the business support package, with the sector itself about how that support can be most effective for them, and on agreeing the detail of the package that I've announced today. That still gives the whole of the rest of this week for people to plan now against the announcement that I've just made. I think it is very much in line with the approach that we have taken, working with other people, talking to them while the decision is still being shaped, not after the decision has been finalised, and doing it in a way that does allow people the most we can offer in terms of being able to plan ahead and to accommodate to the difficult decisions that I know this will mean for the sector. Hywel, diolch yn fawr. Over to Linda Morris at the Daily Post.
Good afternoon, First Minister. Do you worry that these new hospitality rules will just encourage people to drink in an uncontrolled way in each other's homes and risk spreading the virus?
That has to be an anxiety, of course. We've rehearsed that over the weekend as well. We've taken some advice from the people who are responsible for enforcing the current restrictions, and on the whole, the enforcement agencies don't report a huge displacement of this sort of activity into people's homes. But is it one of the things that we weigh up? Is it one of the things that we could be anxious about? Definitely. But it is why, Linda, isn't it? Week after week now, I've been coming to this podium and saying to people, the future is in your hands and my hands and the hands of every one of us. If people think that the way to respond to this is to take different sorts of risks and to pose new sorts of public health challenges, then we won't succeed. So the real answer to the question is not for governments to be anxious about it, but for people themselves to ask themselves that question, not what can I do, but what should I do? And what should I do does not involve taking risks from one sector and replicating them somewhere else.
Blanket restrictions on the hospitality sector in Wales have been branded unfair on areas in the north of Wales, where the virus numbers are much lower than they are in the south. For example, there are 19 cases per 100,000 in Conwy, but the overall average for Wales is about 10 times that. So do you think that further restrictions on an already struggling sector is a fair approach for areas with low cases?
Well, again, I think that's a very proper point to put. If the pattern in Wales was absolutely stable, so that low areas were always low and high areas were always high, then I think the case for different restrictions in different parts of the country would be stronger. But 10 days ago when I was standing here, I was being asked questions about why we were taking action in Ceredigion and in Pembrokeshire where cases were very low. Today, the numbers in Ceredigion are nearly 200 per 100,000, and they're over 100 in Carmarthenshire and in Pembrokeshire as well. Things can change very rapidly. In North Wales today, 3 of the 6 local authorities have rising numbers. 4 of them have rising numbers in the under 25 age range. I associate myself with what Michael Gove, the Conservative cabinet member, said over the weekend in his article in The Times when he was addressing that very issue. He said, "We are a small, densely populated country where this virus has proven it can spread with ease. Casting the net wide is more effective." So the actions we are taking in Wales are designed to protect people in North Wales, to allow them to hang on to the advantages of the firebreak for longer, and to stop the virus from heading back in those parts of Wales to where it is in other places. And I think it is the right thing to do. Linda, thank you. To Thomas Davis at LBC.
What do you say to those businesses and into January when trade is quieter, even with the financial support, there's bound to be some that are just going to give up and say, it's not worth it, we can't keep going like this.
Well, all I can say to them, Thomas, is, we are still in the grip of a public health emergency. And the choice we are balancing all the time in the Welsh Government is between saving lives and saving livelihoods. And I gave you the figures that the modelling tells us of lives that could be lost in Wales over this winter if we weren't able to turn back the tide of the virus as we see it rising in Wales today. So while I'm hugely sympathetic with those businesses, anxious for their futures, looking to find ways through the very large sums of public money that we will now be spending to help those businesses through these difficult weeks, we're having to balance the impact on them with the lives that would otherwise be lost.
And may I ask, why are responsible drinkers being punished? Would a limit of 1 or 2 drinks not have been a fairer compromise, especially for wet-led venues who may feel it's not worth opening at all now? Gair ateb y Gymraeg a Saesneg, os gwelwch yn dda.
Of course. The problem we face is generally like this, isn't it? The vast majority of people in Wales do the right thing, want to know what the rules are, work hard to try to stick by them. What we've learnt with this virus is that you only need a relatively small minority of people who don't behave in the right way for the virus to thrive and the virus to spread. And the virus is no respecter of whether people are behaving well or behaving badly. It can affect anybody. And in the end, in order to protect the people who are doing the right thing, we have to have rules that are based on what works for everybody. And that sadly has to include those people who are less willing to follow the rules and to do the right thing. So that's difficult, and it does have an unfair and disproportionate effect on people who would be responsible, do the right thing. But in the end, these changes are as much designed to protect them as they are to protect anybody else. So ni wedi weld yma yng Nghymru ledled ar gyfwng. Mae y mwyafrif o bobl yng Nghymru yn eisiau wneud ein gorau glas, sy'n eisiau cydymffurfio gyda y reoliadau. Ond mae nifer fach o bobl sydd ddim yn wneud pethau sy'n resymol. Mae nhw'n cael effaith ar pob un arall ohono ni. A dyna pam ni wedi difeisio y reoliadau newid dwi wedi cyhoeddi heddi. Mae nhw'n yna i warchod pob un ohono ni. Y pobl sy'n wneud y peth go iawn ac y bobl sydd ddim yn fodlon i mynd ymlaen gyda'r pethau sy'n warchod ni i gyd oddi wrth coronavirus. Mae'n anodd, wrth gwrs, i bobl sy'n yn bihafio mewn ffordd resymol ac sy'n cymryd y cyfrifoldeb i wneud pethau fel yna, ond mae'r reoliadau yna i warchod ni i gyd. Thomas, diolch yn fawr. Over to Rob Taylor at wrexham.com.
Good afternoon. Is there any further updates on the outbreak at Wrexham's Hospital? And on that topic, can you confirm there are no PPE supply issues locally? And are there any new plans for regular mass testing of staff at the hospital to help identify and isolate asymptomatic cases?
Rob, I don't have a further update beyond the one that I gave on Friday. There will be, I'm sure later in the day, a report in from the local IMT about the situation over the weekend. I saw reports of PPE on a Wales-wide basis over the weekend. They didn't highlight any supply issues in any part of Wales, but that is not to say that there are not sometimes very, very local issues that arise, but I'm not aware that there are any that are materially part of what is happening in the Myla. And the Myla has this experience already. It's already seen one upswing in cases. It dealt with that successfully. It did involve testing all members of staff at the time, and I'm sure that the people on the spot, the people who are closer to the detail than I am able to be, will be considering that as part of whatever suite of actions they are taking in response to the current situation.
Thank you. Going back to the packages of support announced today, One main concern in response to the draft proposal over the weekend was the turnaround for that support, and you've mentioned payments before Christmas. Is that time frame guaranteed for the business rates grants and the Business Wales ERF sections? And if any councils say they needed extra resources to get the cash out the door, will they get it? And if I can quickly squeeze in, I've had a couple of messages from people in the trade asking if BYOB or Bring Your Own would be allowed as well during this.
Bring Your Own won't be allowed. It's the consumption of alcohol rather than where the alcohol comes from that matters here. In relation to how quickly we can get the money from our hands to the hands of the people who need it, I'm hugely grateful to our local authorities. They're working really hard already on getting the money that we provided during the fire break out to people who need it. This is the time of year when normally they would be focusing on collection of council tax and non-business rates as well. But talks over the weekend did give us some further assurances that with some extra help that we will provide to them, that they are confident that they can be making payments this side of Christmas. The Business Wales payments probably are not in that category because they involve a more apply and consider the application approach to the money, whereas the local authorities, it's a matter of rateable value and fairly automatic payments as a result. But we and they are keen to get as much of this money out of our hands and into the hands of people who need it as fast as we can practically do so. Rob, thank you to Nathan Shoesmith of The Speaker.
Thank you, First Minister. In 23 days' time, travel restrictions are set to be temporarily lifted across the UK and restrictions on household mixing to be eased. A lot can happen in 23 days, as we've found during the pandemic, but if cases have not fallen sharply by then, or even still rising, do you think it would still be responsible to ease restrictions, and are you able to guarantee to people the promise of 5 days of ease restrictions over Christmas?
Well, Nathan, I've explained previously here that the decision over the 5 days of Christmas was in response to the evidence we were seeing that if we didn't provide a plan for Christmas, then people would make up a plan for themselves. And if they weren't reasonable rules that people could understand and abide by, then people would end up making up rules for themselves. So I still think that our way of doing it, the four-nation agreement of a common set of rules, is the right one. And I don't think the choice as we got nearer to Christmas would be between a tougher set of rules that we could be confident everybody would follow and the rules we've currently got in place. And I'm not keen at all on the idea that we would move away from the plan that we've carefully crafted together, because I think the alternative would be a free-for-all, and that would be even more dangerous.
Thank you. And measures have been announced in England in the last couple of hours for the easing of planning restrictions to allow retail outlets to stay open longer hours during the usually busy Christmas and New Year period, with the UK government describing this as a safer way to shop and social distance. What's the Welsh view on this, and would you be supportive of retail outlets staying open much longer hours than usual?
Well, our decision will be entirely guided by the public health impact of such a decision. So when we've had a chance to look at what has been announced and to look at the evidence behind it, if we were convinced that it did have a public health benefit, that the impact was to spread out the time that people were shopping, fewer people would be mixing, that would be a public health advantage, then I think we would look sympathetically on that. But I would want to study the evidence, and if the evidence was contrary to that, that this could have a detrimental effect on public health, then of course we would have to take that very seriously as well. But we haven't seen the detail of the announcement as yet. We haven't had a chance to look at it ourselves, but it is the public health test that we will apply to any developments. If they help, then we'll be sympathetic to them. We'll need to be sure that they do help.
Thank you.
Nathan, thank you. Over to Andrew Nuttall at The Leader.
Thank you, Minister. With the introduction of new restrictions here in Wales, what will this mean here in North Wales and on bordering areas with sort of pubs and bars and restaurants in England? So what is your message to people who may sort of suffer at the hands of the fact that there's possibly a pub only a few minutes down the road that will still be able to open and serve alcohol and things of that nature?
Well, my message is the same message as I've always given over the whole period of the pandemic. Over the last 4 weeks, pubs in England have been closed, while pubs in North Wales have been open. And my message at that time to people in England was not to come across the border illegally in order to try to take advantage of the fact that we had a more liberal regime here. It's the same message in the future. Observe the rules that apply in the part of the United Kingdom where you live, and don't try and game the rules, looking for a way to try to get round them. And sometimes those rules have been to the advantage of businesses on one side of the border or the other. I'm afraid it's just inevitable when you need to calibrate the rules to meet the circumstances that we face in different parts of the UK.
Thank you. And we've already touched on the Marder Hospital, but is it possible to maybe get an update on the picture at the Llangollen home, where there was an outbreak recently? And what would your message be to people who have families at that care home and care homes across Wales that may still have sort of anxieties about their own families?
Well, what we saw at Llangollen in the care home was an example of how, when coronavirus gets into a care home, just how awful the consequences can be for an elderly and vulnerable population. And even when care homes have done their very best to make sure that they are mitigating all the risks they take, this is a virus that finds ways round the defences that we put in place wherever it has the chance to do so. And it's been a pretty dreadful few weeks for that care home. It's getting more help, as you know, from outside sources and advice to make sure that everything that can be done there is being done. But what I would say more generally to people who haven't seen elderly relatives in care homes for many, many weeks, that we still have to strike a balance here in Wales. Today we are starting the pilots of care home visiting using these lateral flow devices where you take a test, within half an hour you know the result, and if it's negative you'll be able to make a visit, still under very carefully controlled conditions. We announced last week the investment we're putting into creating visitor pods in care homes here in Wales. That's been very welcomed by the sector, and there's more that we are hoping to be able to do to create conditions where visits can take place in the future. But even as we try to make it more possible for families to be reunited, we have to do it in a way that respects the vulnerability of those individuals, the impact that allowing coronavirus into a care home can have. So while there are new possibilities, and they're very much driven by our concern for those families, we still have to make sure that our main focus is on protecting those vulnerable people and the other people who live with them in a care home. And that's what the Llangollen experience, as so many others, really brings home to us. Over finally for today to Tom Magner at Carers World.
Thank you very much indeed, First Minister. Can I just pick up on the issue of care homes? We're certainly getting a lot of viewer comment about care homes and Christmas, and clearly you have the MRPA testing programme, the testing trial, so we're going to have to look at this presumably over the days and weeks to come. But one of the complicated situations that's been put to us by one of our viewers, and perhaps I could just explore this with you and maybe we could see how it varies as we get nearer to Christmas. Basically, our viewer has both her father and mother in care homes. They're separate care homes. There are 8 family members who want to visit on a day over Christmas, for example, Christmas Day or Boxing Day. The 8 people wanting to visit comprise our viewer's husband, her 2 sons who are both in their early 20s, her brother and partner, her sister and partner. They're all Welsh. The 2 care homes are in Wales, so there's nothing cross-border. Perhaps you could give us your best indication at this point, appreciating that your guidance may change.
Well, I feel desperately for those people because no matter how well we are able to do things Not all those people are going to be able to see all the people that they would like to see. What we are trying to get to a place is that with lateral flow tests available, one person will be able to make a face-to-face visit. So obviously when you've got a larger family, that means some very difficult choices will have to be made. What I want to say as well, Tom, is that, of course, throughout the pandemic, we spent quite a lot of money and time with the sector trying to make sure that there are other ways in which people can still stay in touch, whether that is over simple telephone calls or these days more with the sort of online calls that we're having today. And for those family members who will not be able to visit inside the care home, I still hope that there will be ways in which people can see each other and talk to each other, particularly over that Christmas period. I've lost the sound. Sorry.
I forgot to mute myself. I've only done over 150 minutes. There we go. I do apologise for that. Just one final question in terms of the testing. You talked about doing one test negative. What do you think of the double negative testing that's happening in certainly English universities, where you have one test now, then one in 3 days' time? If they're both negative, you can travel home before Christmas. Do you think this could be applied and would make care home visiting safer?
Well, a double negative test is inevitably safer than a single negative test. And we are watching very carefully the extent to which lateral flow devices in practice, when they've come out of the laboratory and they've come out of the testing regime and they're being used in real world circumstances, we are looking very carefully at the level of false negatives. Because if we did have an elevated false negative return, then we would have to think very carefully about whether you could use them in care homes in the way that we are during this pilot stage. So far, the evidence is that false negatives from these tests are very low, and that they are safe enough that if you have a negative test and you've got no other signs or symptoms or any other cause for concern, that is sufficient to allow a visit to take place. But just to say, Tom, the visit still takes place under very careful conditions. There's still PPE involved. There's still social distancing involved. It's not a matter of taking a test and just walking into the care home as though there was no need for any other precautions to be taken. But we will learn a lot. It's partly why we're piloting it, as other people are, and we are keeping a very close eye indeed on any evidence that, as I say, in real-world usage, false negatives become an issue with the test. We're hoping not, because if they're not, then that does unlock the possibility of more use for care home purposes, with all the advantages that would bring. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you all very much indeed.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. See you Wednesday. So you're on mute.